In April 1940, NARVIK, a small port in the Atlantic north of Norway, where 85% of the iron raw materials used by Nazi Germany's war machine were exported through the port. At that time, Norway's position was as a neutral country in the Second World War conflict between Nazi Germany and Great Britain and Allied forces. Britain's efforts to disrupt the iron export process carried out by Nazi Germany to its country during the 2 months of the fierce Winter War were successful, and caused Hitler to experience his first major defeat. On April 8, 1940, a group of Norwegian soldiers who had finished their duties and were supposed to be on holiday arrived in Narvik by ship. One of them was named Corporal Gunnar Toft. However, it turned out that the critical situation resulting from the Nazi German invasion of the city of Narvik forced the commander to cancel his troops' leave. Knowing this, Corporal Gunnar Toft asked permission to go home for a while to meet his wife and son, Ole, whose birthday was that day. Arriving at the village where he lived, he met his wife Ingrid, who was a waitress at a city hotel not far from their house, and at the hotel it turned out that a meeting was taking place between representatives of Nazi Germany and England to discuss working relations between the warring countries, where both require iron raw materials from mining from Sweden, which are then sent via Norway. During these meetings, Ingrid also worked as a translator between Nazi Germany and England. After spending the night with his family, Gunnar awakens before dawn when Nazi German troops land in Narvik. When he returned to his troops, Gunnar found the Norwegian troops being repulsed by Nazi German troops who had forced their way into the city. After a brief stalemate, the Norwegian commander ordered his troops to withdraw and was forced to let Nazi German troops take control of Narvik. Nazi Germany began to arrest people who opposed it, including envoys from Allied countries. The British consul, who knowing this, tried to escape from the hotel. Then, thanks to the help of Ingrid and her friends, they managed to escape and hide in a cabin at the top of the mountain. Meanwhile, the remaining Norwegian troops headed for a railway bridge in the mountains, which they planned to blow up on the commander's orders, so that Nazi German troops could not use the railway line. Gunnar, who is a former bridge worker, was told by the commander to blow it up, because only Gunnar knew where the dynamite was kept, and was ready to blow up the bridge if necessary. Gunnar then called his father, who knew where the dynamite was stored, because his father also worked on building the bridge. After telling him where the dynamite was kept, Gunnar was told that his wife and child were on the train heading to the bridge. After finding dynamite, Gunnar and 2 other soldiers prepare to blow up the bridge, but soon a group of civilians are seen emerging from the tunnel, including Ingrid and Ole, who was deliberately taken down by Nazi German troops and forced to walk. Gunnar then told Ingrid and Ole to immediately leave the place, but Ole, who didn't want to be separated from his father, decided to wait in the tunnel. Likewise, Ingrid finally complied with her son's wishes. However, not long afterward, Nazi German soldiers arrived and then there was a shootout. Despite experiencing obstacles, in the end Gunnar and 2 other Norwegian soldiers succeeded in blowing up the bridge. Gunnar was finally arrested, while Ingrid and Ole, who insisted on waiting, were taken back to town. Nazi Germany takes over the hotel, asking Ingrid to work for them as a translator. Nazi Germany begins searching for the British consul, whom Ingrid hides in a mountain cabin. Additionally, the German consul, Fritz Wassow, asked Ingrid to help persuade the mayor, Theodor Brock, who was against them. Ingrid agrees, but on one condition: as long as Wassow is willing to help free Gunnar, who has been captured by Nazi German troops. The next day, the British consul, Ross, summons Ingrid to visit the cabin, where Ross asks Ingrid to help steal secret information about Nazi Germany's defense of the city of Narvik. This information will later be conveyed to British troops who will attack the port. Ingrid, not wanting to get too involved, initially refuses, but when Ross threatens to tell Nazi Germany that Ingrid helps him hide, this forces Ingrid to comply with Consul Ross's request. Upon Ingrid's return from her meeting with Consul Ross, the British Navy entered the harbor and began shelling the German destroyers there, which makes Ingrid, Ole, Aslak, and other civilians have to hide in the bunker. After the battle, all the German destroyers were sunk, but no British troops were landed. In the chaos, Ingrid manages to steal a map of Nazi Germany's defenses in the city, and then gave it to Ross, who sent the information to a British warship. When he returned, the British began bombarding the city with heavy artillery, who then killed Gunnar's father, Aslak, and injured Ole, who was hit by artillery fragments that landed on their house. 4 weeks later, Nazi Germany fortified the area around Narvik. Meanwhile, in the mountains, Gunnar and other prisoners of war are seen being forced to move supplies belonging to Nazi Germany. Then suddenly they were attacked by French and Norwegian soldiers. who managed to free Gunnar and the other prisoners. Gunnar then intends to return to Narvik after being informed of his father's death. However, the commander managed to convince Gunnar to continue fighting for Norway's independence from the grip of Nazi Germany. On the other hand, while hiding in the bunker, Ole, who was previously injured, apparently experienced an infection due to the wound he suffered. In the midst of a hail of bullets, Ingrid dared to take Ole to the hotel and asked Wasau to call a doctor to save Ole. Wasau refused on the grounds that currently doctors were only on standby for Nazi German soldiers. Ingrid, who heard this, had no other choice and was forced to tell Wasau about the hiding place of British Consul Ross. According to the agreement, Wasau had to call a doctor to treat Ole, who was increasingly critical, and sure enough, not long after, the German Nazi doctor managed to remove the bullet fragments from Ole's lungs. Doctors later said the shrapnel was only a few centimeters from Ole's lung. 2 weeks later, Allied troops began to enter Narvik. In this mission, the commander ordered his troops to destroy the large Nazi German artillery that was in a tunnel in the mountains. A battle ensued, but they were forced to retreat due to fierce attacks by Nazi troops. However, after the commander threatened to finish off anyone who ran from the battle, Gunnar and the others finally returned to fighting. Gunnar and several of his colleagues then succeeded in destroying the large artillery belonging to Nazi Germany, which was used to fire on British warships. With the defeat of Nazi German forces in the mountains, Narvik was now again controlled by Norwegian and Allied forces. Nazi Germany, realizing that it had suffered a crushing defeat, finally withdrew from Narvik. As Nazi Germany prepares to leave, Wasau then asks Ingrid to go with him to Berlin. The reason is, Nazi Germany will not remain silent about the defeat at Narvik and will immediately send bombers to destroy the city. However, Ingrid still refused the invitation. Receiving Ingrid's refusal, Wasau then said that Gunnar had actually been murdered, proven by documents containing a list of names of Nazi German prisoners in his possession. After following the advice of the owner of the hotel where he works, he is warned that his actions in collaborating with Nazi Germany as a translator have spread throughout the city, and the townspeople already consider Ingrid a traitor. Ingrid also decides to leave Narvik with Ole. Meanwhile, after a major victory that succeeded in expelling Nazi Germany from Narvik, Gunnar and the other soldiers returned to the city. However, when many people took to the streets to celebrate the victory, Gunnar did not see that Ingrid and Ole were also there to celebrate. Then, when he asked his wife's friend who also worked at the hotel, he was told that his wife had been betraying him all this time. Gunnar then returned to his house and found it had been damaged by the attack that night. Then there Gunnar met Ingrid and Ole again. Gunnar, who knew that his wife had worked for Nazi Germany, called Ingrid a traitor, but Ingrid explained why she did this, and at the same time some Nazi German bombers came into the city and started dropping their bombs. One of them managed to get Gunnar's friend killed. Gunnar then joins his troops, where the commander is seen giving the order to counterattack. Then Gunnar saw Ingrid and Ole leaving to the harbor to board a fishing boat that would take them to flee Narvik with other civilians. However, people who already considered Ingrid a traitor then mocked them for having worked for Nazi Germany. On the other hand, Gunnar, who was faced with two choices, was confused. He had to choose to fight and defend his country but leave his family behind, or reuniting with his family Ingrid and Ole. But in the end Gunnar chose to run away from the troops and chase Ingrid and Ole. Then they boarded a boat together leaving Narvik, before Nazi Germany succeeded in bombarding the city, then managed to retake Narvik.